Hello friends, myself is Joseph and I am here to take you to the new world of physics. So today I just want to take you to the world of physics, especially to the world of electricity and magnetism. We know that electricity and magnetism are all around us and it's an essential factor for our lives. So here today our first chapter, electric charges and fields, which is coming under the stream of electrostatics. We know that it's a branch of physics which deals with the electric charges and their properties, their interactions, then especially some of the phenomena based on that particular electric concepts. So in this module, we will discuss about some of the factors like electric charges, types of charges, then its properties. Then we will go to the theory behind the electrification. Basically, we are following with the electron theory behind theory of electrification. Then electrostatic induction. And the most important one, that is Coulomb's law. And finally, the Coulomb's law in vectors. So these are the sections that we are going to take in today's class. So first one, electric charges and their types and property. Electric charges. In the time of BC itself, some of the scientists like Thales and Gilbert, they have found that some materials like amber or rubber, when they are rubbed with some other materials, they are showing some type of attractive property. They are attracting some type of bits of paper or dry leaves. So from that concept, the path or it paved the path to the field of electrostatics. So but Thales and the scientists failed to establish the reason, the basic reason behind this particular phenomena. And later Gilbert also found that it's not the amber. There are many materials they are showing this particular property. So as I said, when a material is rubbed with the other one, they are showing the attractive properties. So definitely you can say the rubbing, which means the friction. The friction is the reason for this particular phenomena of a particular material. So generally electric charge is a property of material which is acquired by that material by the process of rubbing. Friction is the main reason for this one. So the material likewise became charged is called electrified material, and the reason behind is frictional electricity. So this is the one we are going to discuss today, electric charges. Then types of charges, which will come, that you will see in the coming sections, how the charges were divided, or what are the types of charges and the properties. Okay. So in the time of 17th century, by the end of 17th century or by the beginning of the 18th century, Benjamin Franklin, he found the different types of charges. He found that the charges obtained or acquired by the bodies by rubbing is not the same. For that he just made some experiments using rubber and ebonite. He took a rubber rod and he charged it with a silk by rubbing only. We know that by rubbing you can charge the rubber and it will get some type of charge, and basically we don't know about the charge, and afterwards we called them some names, and that we will discuss after this section. So he took a rod and he rubbed it with a silk, and what he did is he just suspended this rod in a particular hook, and what he did, he took another one and also it is also rubbed with a silk. So he found that when he brought that second one to the first one, he saw that these bodies are repelling each other, which means they are not coming into attraction, they are repelled each other. At the same time, he took another rod which is of ebonite and he rubbed it with a cat silk, cat wool is there, and with his he just rubbed this one, and it has also got some charge, because found that because you can, if you some bits of papers are there and you observed that it is attracting that paper. So that manner we can say that there are some type of charges in this particular body. And he took another one, it's basically made up of ebonite only, and that also rubbed. So he saw that both these rods are again repelling each other. So which means the charge obtained on these two, which means ebonite rod and glass rod, seems to be same only for these two cases and also for these two cases. Okay. And the next case, what he did is, he took a glass rod and he brought another ebonite rod close to this one. Both are charged. And he observed that both the bodies are coming together, which means they are showing some type of attraction. So on that basis, he came to the conclusion that there were two types of charges, and one is, he called the glass that is acquired as positive, and the one that is obtained by the ebonite rod as negative. So that manner we can say there are two types of electric charges. One is positively charged and the other one is negatively charged. Clear? Then another conclusion from this experiment is, unlike charges will attract each other and same charges will repulse each other. So these are the two conclusions that were given by the Benjamin Franklin to the world of electrostatics. I think it is clear. Okay. Now, as I said earlier, by the friction, the bodies are getting charged. Electrification is taking place. What's the reason behind that? So that's our next topic, the reason behind electrification. So, or the theory behind electrification. Basically, nowadays, modern days, we are explaining this electrification with the help of electron model. We know that all the materials are made up of atoms. Atom consists of electrons, proton and neutron, in which proton and neutrons are concentrated at the center of the atom, and we are calling it as nucleus. So, all the atoms, there will be a center, spherical shape it is for better concept. So, protons and neutrons will be in the nucleus. And the mass of the proton is approximately equal to the mass of neutron, and which is approximately equal to 1.7 into 10 raised to minus 27 kilogram. Okay, so this is the mass of proton and neutron, and the mass of the electron is very much smaller when compared with the mass of proton and neutron. So basically we can say that the whole mass of the atom will be concentrated at the nucleus. Electrons are very small, mass is there, but it is too small when compared with the proton and neutron. And the electrons are revolving where? Electrons are revolving around the nucleus with respect to their energy levels. Okay, so this is the basic structure of an atom that we know. And one more thing, the charge of the electron is equal to the charge of the proton, only they are changing in the sign only. Okay, so charge of the electron is almost 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulomb, whereas it is for negative sign is for the electron, and plus 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 for proton. Is it clear? And the number of electron is equal to the number of proton in the case of a neutral atom. It's neutral atom. In neutral atom, the number of electrons will be equal to number of protons. That's why the atom is said to be neutral. So, a particular atom or any material in their stable state, they won't show any type of electric attraction or repulsion. They will not show any type of electrification. So, that's the basic idea. Now, we are just moving to the case of theory behind this electrification. If one of the if this electron gets a chance to jump out from this particular atom's electrostatic force, what happens? There will be a nuclear force will be there. If it is capable of jumping out from this force, then definitely there will be a deficiency will be created, and that manner this atom will become a positively charged one. The same time, if one electron from other material will comes to this particular atom, definitely it will get a additional electron, which means it will become a negatively charged. So basically we know that protons, which is not possible to move around this one because it is highly concentrated at the nucleus, electrons are the main reason for electrification. Electrons are the one which are moving, their deficiency and their increase in number will create the charge in a particular atom. Okay, so for the better understanding of this one, we can consider one example. If you take any material, just consider it is neutral in its state. Okay, and just consider another one. Let's call it as A and another one B. Both are neutral in their state. Okay, when we rub these two bodies together, what happens there means there can be a possibility of flow of charge from one body to another, which means some of the electrons in this particular A body can move to B. In that manner, what happens? If some electrons move to this particular B, definitely there will be a deficiency of electrons in the body A, and the same amount of deficiency will be created here with an addition of the same number of electrons in the other body. In such a manner, the body A will get positively charged and B will get negative charge. So this is the theory behind the electrification, which means as the movement of electrons will bring this particular phenomena to a particular body, by the increase in the number of electrons or by the addition of electrons from other body, it will get a negative charge. By the removal of electrons from the atom surface, it will get a positive charge. Okay. Now, electrically, all the materials can be classified into two types. One is conducted and the other one is insulated, and one more is the semiconductor that we will discuss in this year itself. It is some more additional concept is required for that one. So conductors and insulators. We know the difference between these conductors and insulators. Conductors means they are capable of conducting charges through them, isn't it? Whereas insulators, they are not allowing the electricity or anything electricity to pass through that particular surface. Okay, then what's the main carriers of electricity in a conductor? Definitely we can say that it's a free electron. What is free electron? Free electrons means the electrons which are seen in the outermost shell of an atom, isn't it? When they get some amount of energy, they are capable of jumping out from their outermost shell and become free to move around the volume of that particular metal, and that's the one which carries the electric charge from one point to another in a particular conductor. Let's say in the case of insulator, the number of free electrons will be very negligible, which means there is no free electrons at all. Clear? So conductors and insulator, very important one. And in that manner, we can transfer the electrical energy from one body to another through different processes. The major ones are conduction and the other one is induction. Conduction, as all of you know that conduction. What is conduction? So in which we can transfer the charge from a charged body to an uncharged body by the process of touching, isn't it? You can take one body, a conductor is there, and you can take another one which is a charged one. Okay, let's call it as positively charged glass rod. We are taken there, and if you touch this rod with this one, what happens? The electrons present in this particular conductor will move towards this glass rod, and that manner they will get neutralized. The same manner there will create a deficiency of electron in this particular body, and that manner it will become a positively charged one. So you can see by the process of touching, you have made an uncharged body into a charged one, and this is the idea coming under conduction phenomena. And what's the difference between conduction and induction? So induction means here in conduction the touching is the reason for the transferring of charge, whereas in induction we are charging an uncharged body into a charged one without touching them. So that's the importance of electrostatic induction phenomena. If you take an uncharged body and if you consider a charged body there, if you bring this charged body closer to this particular one, you can see, we know that it's a neutral one, even though it consists of electrons and protons, but due to the presence of this positive charge rod near to this uncharged one, the electrons of this particular body will move towards this side. Clear? And correspondingly, the positive charge, we know that same charges will repulse each other. So, like charges will repulse, the positive charges will move to the other side. Clear? So, now you can see there is created an electron cloud in this side and a positive cloud here. Okay, and if you touch this side or if you earth this portion, what happens? We know that earth is a good absorber and a donor of electrons. So what happens? This will become neutralized. So after removal of this particular earthing, you can see that the body will be negatively charged. Clear? Okay, so this is the phenomena we are calling electrostatic induction. And one thing you can notice that in conduction, the positive charge, the body that we are used to charge an uncharged body, it is losing its charge there, isn't it? Which means we cannot take this body to charge any other one. But in the process of induction, you can take this body to charge any other uncharged body, because there is no loss, which means there is no neutralization happening on this particular glass rod or any body that we are took for this particular process. So this is, we are calling it as electrostatic induction. Now come to the case of non-conductors. So just for the sake, you can consider an atomic model. It is spherical in shape, and the center is concentrated of proton and neutron, and electrons are revolving around it, isn't it? If you take another glass rod, rubbed with this silk and become positively charged, and if you bring this particular rod closer to this atom, you can see it's a non-conductor, atoms of a non-conductor. So definitely you can see that it's a spherical in shape, even though the electrons will try to stay or try to spend some more time in this side. So as a result, the shape of this particular atom will be like this. It will slightly changes into an oval shape. Okay, so this happens in the case of non-conductors. Is it clear? So in non-conductors, the charges will stay there where we are given that particular charge. But in the case of conductors, the charge will be flow throughout their surface. So this thing you just keep it in mind. Induction and conduction, when we are discussing this one, conduction by the process of touching, whereas induction, without touching, we are inducing a charge to an uncharged body. Clear? At the same time, the body that we are used to charge in the case of induction can be used to charge any other material without any reduction in its charge capabilities, whereas in conduction, by the continuous process, the charge in this particular one will be lost. But in both the cases, conservation of charge is happening. There is no loss or no gain of charge is not taking place there, which means they are following conservation law. The charge is neither created nor destroyed. Okay. So this is all about electrostatic induction principle. So we have discussed two topics, that is electric charge and their types. Then we have discussed electrostatic induction and the theory behind electrification. Now we are coming to the case of properties of electric charges. There are three properties are there. One is quantization of electric charge, and the other one is second one is conservation law. Third one is invariance of electric charges. Okay. So first one is quantization. What do you mean by quantization? We have already discussed these things. Quantization of electric charges means what? Okay. So there will be a general electric one, which means we can't see a fractional charge. Can you say 2 by 3 electric charge is there, 2 by 3 electron charge is there? Like this we can't say. Are you following this one? Which means all the charge of a particular body will be present or will be obtained as a integral multiple of smallest division of charge, and that is E we are considering, and that E is equal to 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulomb. That's the charge of one electron. Is it clear? It's clear now. So quantization of charge means in all ways, if you say the charge of a body will definitely plus or minus NE, which means it's an integral multiple of electric charge E, where N can be 1, 2, 3 or more than that. Okay. So this is, which means fractional, which means 2 by 3 or 0.7 E. This type of charges will not occur in universe. Okay. The charges will always present as an integral multiple of the smallest division E, which means electric charge cannot be divided indefinitely. It's clear now? So I forgot to say one thing. When an atom loses one electron, it will become positively charged, isn't it? When it becomes positively charged, in terms of coulombs we can represent this one. And coulomb is a unit of electric charge. There are bunch of definitions are there for coulombs, and most probably we will discuss some of the definitions in this section itself. And the first one is based on the electric current concept. What is electric current? It's a rate of flow of charge. So current equals charge by time. So from that manner we can say charge equals current into multiply with time. And the unit we are usually representing it with a coulomb, capital C, and that is equal to 1 coulomb will be equal to 1 current ampere into 1 second. So in that manner we can define 1 coulomb. 1 coulomb is the electric charge that flows through a particular body when a current of 1 ampere flows for a time period of 1 second. Okay, so coulomb is the SI unit of electric charge that we are using for electric charges, and it can be defined on the basis of the flow of current, the flow of rate of charge, which means when a current of 1 ampere flows for a time period of 1 second, then the charge flown through that body will be equal to 1 coulomb. It's clear, no? So that's the basis. So 1 coulomb, 1 coulomb is an enormous quantity. You cannot say about that one. You cannot think about that particular charge quantity. It's an enormous one. We usually discuss with the microcoulombs only. Okay. So 1 microcoulomb is almost equal to 10 raised to minus 6 coulombs. So that much small quantity we can discuss only with that particular smaller quantity. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind. 1 coulomb is an enormous quantity that you can see in all your life. Okay. So when one more thing we have to additional things for this one. 1 electron, the charge of 1 electron equals 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulomb, and that of proton is plus minus and plus sign we will represent for electron and proton. So you can see from here we can say 1 coulomb is equal to 1 by 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19. Clear? So that much is the quantity of 1 coulomb. So you can see almost it will be a high quantity will be there. So this is about, so when an atom loses 1 electron, definitely there will be an addition of 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulomb charge of that charge will be positive in nature. Same time, when an electron comes to an atom, there will be an addition of 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulomb charge in that atom. That will be in negative. Clear? So this is the thing that I want to add there with this particular condensation. So condensation means electric charges will be there in the form of an integral multiple of their smallest quantity, that is E. We cannot expect a fractional charge there. Clear? Okay. But in the modern days, we have found that the fundamental particles with which electrons and protons are made up of quarks. There are 6 types of quarks are there. Basically they are up, down, top, bottom, charm and strange. So these are the 6 types of quarks, the fundamental particle with which electrons, protons and neutrons are made up of. So in which the last 4 one, the top, bottom, charm and strange, they will usually disintegrate into the first 2, that is up and down. So we usually discuss about up and down, and almost the protons are made up of up and down quarks. Okay, so their charges, for the case of up, the charge of an up quark is equal to 2 by 3 E, and whereas its anti-quark is minus 2 by 3 E, and whereas for the down it is almost equal to 1 by 3 E, and its antiquark is minus 1 by 3 E. So then you may get some doubt, then how you are telling that quantization of charge Q is equal to Ne. So for that purpose you can consider the proton concept. What is the charge of proton? It is almost equal to plus E, we are telling, isn't it? So a proton is made up of quarks. Basically it is made up of 2 up quarks and 1 down quarks, which means 2 up plus 1 down. So you can take this one, 2 by 3 E plus 2 by 3 E plus 1 by 3 E. So you can check the relativity of this one. After that you can see that it will be equal to plus E. Clear? So likewise for the case of neutron and for the case of electron, you can check this particular charge based on the concept of quarks. So still now the experiments and research is going on this particular field. So there are much more to discuss about this one, but it is enough for us as a part of our syllabus. Okay. So that's the first property, that is condensation of charge. Now the second property of charge that we have already discussed, that is the conservation of charge. Clearly we know that conservation of charge means charge cannot be created or nor destroyed, which means you can consider the case of glass rod. When a glass rod is rubbed with silk, you can see that there will be a flow of electrons will take place in this particular body. As a result, if some electrons will be lost and there will be some addition of electron in this particular system. But when you consider the whole system, then net charge of the system will remain constant. You can see in glass rod there will be some loss of charge. Same time there will be addition of that much charge in the second silk, isn't it? So as a whole, when you consider the system together, the total charge of the system will remain constant, and that is the conservation. So that's the second property of electric charge. Electric charges will follow the conservation law. The energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Charges cannot be created nor destroyed. And the third one in this particular property category, that is the invariance of charge, which means if a charge moves with a particular velocity, it will not make any type of change in the value of charge. Which means, just consider, for a static charge, the charge seems to be Qs. If we make this charge to move with a particular velocity v, that time also the charge of the particular charge will be remain same. That will be Qv, which means Qs will be equal to Qv. There is no variance in the value of charge, whether it is a static one or a moving one with a particular velocity. But in the case of mass, it is not like that. Mass is a variant, isn't it? Mass is a variant. Mass will vary as a fact of m0 by square root of 1 minus v square by c square. So you can see the mass will vary. If the velocity is increased, the value of mass will become very less there. So mass is a variant one, whereas charge is an invariant one. So that's the properties of electric charges. First one is condensation of charge. Charges are integral, will be there in the state of integral multiple of their smallest unit, that is Q is equal to plus or minus Ne, whereas second one is conservation of charge. Charges cannot be created nor destroyed. The third one, invariance of charge, which means the value of charge will not move, it doesn't change with respect to the velocity. Clear? Okay. So that's all about the properties of electric charges. Now we are moving to the most important part of our section, that is Coulomb's law. As I said earlier, like charges will repulse each other, whereas unlike charges will attract each other, isn't it? When you bring two same charge with like charge bodies together, you can see both will accelerate away from each other, whereas if you bring a positively charged one and a negatively charged body, you can see they will accelerate towards each other. So definitely for this particular process, there is the presence of force is there, isn't it? A force is required for this repulsion and attraction, and that force we are calling it as electric force. And Coulomb, the great scientist, have given the idea based on this electric force, and he given that the force of repulsion or attraction taking between the two charges placed in a particular medium will be directly proportional to the product of charges. If you consider Q1 and Q2 be the charges, then it will be the product of Q1 and Q2, and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them, where we are considering R as the distance between two charges. If you consider Q1 and Q2 be the two charges, let's consider they are like charges, positively charged, so they will get a particular repulsive force, and that force will be directly proportional to the product of the charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. And in that manner we can write F is equal to K. It's a proportionality constant. Nowadays we are calling it as Coulomb's constant. Okay, K Q1 times Q2 divided by R square. So this is known as Coulomb's law. The force of attraction or repulsion between the two charges placed in a particular medium will be directly proportional to the product of charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So clearly you can see Coulomb's law is obeying the inverse square law. You can see 1 by R square. It is inverse square law. So it is following the inverse square law. Okay. Then come to the case of proportionality K. I told you proportionality constant is, nowadays we are calling it as Coulomb's constant, and the value of K is generally it is considered 9 into 10 raised to 9, and what will be its unit? Unit will be Newton, then R square, that is meter square, then charge square, isn't it? What is the unit of charge? Is Coulomb. So by Coulomb square. So the value of proportionality constant K, or Coulomb's constant K, equals 9 into 10 raised to 9 Newton meter square by Coulomb's square. Clear? So that's the value of K. And historically, the value of K is also represented as 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0. The value of this 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 is almost equal to 9 into 10 raised to 9. So in that manner we can replace this K with a 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0, where epsilon 0 is called permittivity of free space. It's called as permittivity of free space. Clear? And its value equals, epsilon 0 equals 8.85 into 10 raised to minus 12 Coulomb square per Newton meter square. That you can find from this particular one, like 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 equals 9 into 10 raised to 9. From that manner you can find the value of epsilon, which is almost equal to 8.85 into 10 raised to minus 12 Coulomb square per Newton meter square. So permittivity of free space, epsilon 0, we are representing in that manner. And this is the concept of, we are discussed where the charges are placed in vacuum. And this epsilon 0 is almost equal to the permittivity of air also. If you are considering the charge in air, then the permittivity of free space is almost equal, permittivity of this particular dielectric medium will almost equal to the case of air. Okay, which means instead of considering air or vacuum, we are considering another medium, then definitely epsilon will be equal to K times epsilon 0, where K is called dielectric constant and it will vary with respect to the medium. And for the case of air, as I told you, epsilon is equal to epsilon 0 for the case of air only. Clear? If instead of considering air or vacuum, if you are considering any other medium like glass or any other thing, then definitely its permittivity will be equal to K into epsilon 0, where K is the dielectric constant of that particular medium. Clear? So if you are considering any some other mediums instead of vacuum, the relation for Coulomb's law will changes to 1 by 4 pi epsilon Q1 Q2 by R square. Clear? Or again we can written as 1 by 4 pi K epsilon 0 Q1 Q2 by R square. Clear? This is for the case of a medium rather than vacuum or air. Clear? Okay, then its dimensional formula also you can find by using the dimensional concept of force, charge and distance, which means length. Okay, that manner you can find the dimensional formula for each cases. For the case of what we call proportionality constant, that is Coulomb's constant, and also for epsilon and for the dielectric constant you can find using that particular ideas of dimensional analysis that already you are learned in class 11. Okay. Now, as you have seen, Coulomb has given the idea of the force acting between the two charges, that is F is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 Q1 Q2 by R square. Have you ever seen any relation similar to this one? So just think about the Newton's gravitational law. What is that? The Newton's gravitational law states that the force of attraction between the two mass bodies will be directly proportional to the product of mass and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them, isn't it? So that is F equals, a constant is there that we are calling it as gravitational constant G, m1 m2 by r square, isn't it? Both are similar to each other, isn't it? But they are different in their respect, isn't it? Here instead of charge we are considered, and here instead of charge we are considered the mass of the body, and the constant, this is the Coulomb's constant, and here it is gravitational constant, but both are obeying inverse square law. And similarly, if you consider two protons there, we can consider consider the gravitational force and electric force for the two cases. If you consider two protons there, then what will be the force of electrostatic force between the two protons? That will be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 Q1 Q2, that is 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 Coulomb whole square divided by distance. Just put it as R itself, R square. Same time for gravitation it will be between the two protons, 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 mass of proton whole square divided by R square. And what is the mass of proton? It is almost equal to 1.7 into 10 raised to minus 27 kilogram square. Okay, then on relating these two, Fe by Fg, you can say the values of this one, what is 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 square divided by 1.7 into 10 raised to, and there comes, sorry, this is not 1 by epsilon 0, this is gravitational constant G. Okay, so 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 into this one divided by G into 1.7 into 10 raised to minus 27 whole square. So as you see this one, the electric force will become will be very high quantity when compared with the gravitational force. In the case of proton, it's almost equal to 10 raised to 36 times the force of gravitation. You can see it's a high quantity, Fe, which means the electrostatic force between the two protons seems to be 10 raised to 36 times the force of gravitation, the attraction between the two mass of the proton. Clear? So electrostatic force is very high there, and that's the same case for the electron also. And you can see the atom, we know that the center is mainly composed of proton and neutron, and between the proton there is a force of this much is present there. Even in that particular case, we know that what is the size of a nucleus? Almost in the ratio of 10 raised to minus 12 centimeter. In that small space, how these protons are composed or being placed. So that's a bigger concept. There, the nuclear force will come in action. Nuclear force is very much different from this particular case of electrostatic force. We have to say that there is some type of electrostatic force of repulsion is there, but the nuclear force is much more strong when compared with that electrostatic force. That's why protons are composed in that particular small space or concentrated in that particular small space. Clear? Okay, then there are some type of differences there, even if they are obeying the inverse square law. The first difference is electrostatic forces will always can be attractive or repulsive in nature. We can say that if they are like charges, there will be a repulsion will be there. If they are opposite or unlike charges, attraction will be there. Same time, in the case of gravitation, only attractive force will be there. Only attraction will take place between the bodies. Then the second one, with respect to the medium, electrostatic force will vary, isn't it? 1 by 4 pi epsilon. So last section we have discussed that one. If that medium is changed, then definitely the epsilon will come in action. That is, epsilon is equal to k epsilon 0, where k is the dielectric constant of that particular medium. So with respect to the medium, the value of electrostatic force, repulsion or attraction will vary. But in the case of gravitation, you can see the G is constant for universe. It's a universal constant. So there is no change in the value of G, even if you consider any medium. If you consider vacuum or air or water or glass, the value of G will remain same. Okay. So that's the thing. The value of gravitational force will remain same whether even in any medium, whereas in case of electrostatic force it will vary with respect to the medium that we are considering. Clear? Okay. Then the last one is the electrostatic force is very much higher when compared with the gravitational force. So now we are moving to the last section of our today's section, that is Coulomb's law in vector form. Coulomb's law in vector form. So just consider two charges, Q1 and Q2. Is place some points A and B at P. Just for an example, we can consider both Q1 and Q2 are of same charges. Okay, and just consider its origin is there and the position vector to the charge Q1, let it be R1, and to the position vector to the charge Q2 be R2. Okay, so we know that they are same charges, so definitely there will be a force of repulsion will be there, and we have the general formula for force of repulsion, that is F is directly proportional to product of charges, that is 1 by 4 pi epsilon. So just consider this in air or in vacuum. So Q1, Q2 by the distance between them. Just consider it as R. So it will be R square. So now just consider this one. R1 and R2 are the position vectors to the charges Q1 and Q2. Then what will be the distance between this Q1 and Q2, which can be found with the help of displacement vector. If we consider the displacement between these two particular points from Q1 to Q2, it will be the displacement vector R12. Clear? The displacement from 1 to 2 will be the vector R12, whereas if we consider the displacement between these two charges from B to A, then it will be R21. Clear? Okay. Now, the point charge placed at the point B will definitely experience a force, and that force will be along the direction of in the line joining the charge. That will be in this direction. Same time, Q1 will also experience a force of repulsion in the line joining the two charges. And the force experienced in Q2 can be represented as F21. The force experienced in the charge 2 due to 1. And in the case of the point at A, we can write as F12. The force of repulsion will take place in charge Q1 due to 2. Now we are going to express these forces in terms of vector, that is F21 equals 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 charges, that is Q1, Q2 divided by square of the distance, that is it is the force taking place on 2 due to 1. So you have to consider the displacement vector which is coming from 1 to 2, that is R12 vector magnitude square, isn't it? Magnitude of this displacement vector that we are just for the time sake we are taking it as R, or for clear idea we can write it as R12 its magnitude square, and it's a vector, so you have to represent it with a unit vector, that is R12. Clear? And what is this unit vector? That we know that R12 unit vector will be equal to vector R12 divided by magnitude of R12. Clear? So that's the force taking place at the charge Q2, and the similar way the force of repulsion taking place at charge Q1 will be equal to F12, which is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 Q1 Q2 divided by, it is the force taking place on 1 due to 2. So you have to consider the displacement vector which is coming from 2 to 1, that is R21. So square of the magnitude of R21 and the position vector, that is R21. Unit vector, sorry, not the position vector, unit vector R21. Clear? Now, when you consider this position vector and displacement vector, you can bring some more ideas that you have already learned in class 11, that is triangle law of vector addition. Triangle law of vector addition, you are seeing what it is. If two vectors in direction and magnitude representing the two sides of a triangle, then the resultant will be the third side, that will be in the opposite direction, isn't it? So you can check this one. R2 and R21 are representing the sides of a triangle, two sides of a triangle in continuous direction, and this one R1 will be the resultant in the opposite direction. So you can not write the I as 2 plus R21 equals R1. That is R21 equals R1 minus R2. Clear? Similarly, if you consider R1 and R12, then R2 will be the resultant. So just put it as equation number 1. Second one, that is, I am writing here, that is R12 plus R1 equals R2. That is R12 equals R2 minus R1. Equation number 2. Consider this equations 1 and 2. That is R21 equals R1 minus R2. So from that we can say that these two vectors are equal and opposite to each other. Isn't it? If you bring this idea to this particular case, you can say one more thing, that is F21 is equal to minus F12, which means the force taking place in these two charges Q1 and Q2 will be same and opposite to each other. Are you getting some ideas based on this one? Which means similar and opposite charge. What is that? Which can be what we call connected with the help of Newton's third law, isn't it? Action and reaction pair. So likewise we can connect this one. There is a force will take place in the two charges, and that charges will be equal and opposite to each other. Clear? F21 will be equal to minus F12 vector, and these forces are acted along the line which is joining the two charges. Similarly, in that manner we can say Coulomb's law is a central force. Clear? So this is the way we can represent the Coulomb's law in vector form. There are some properties are there for this Coulomb's law. First one, Coulomb's law is only satisfiable for the point charge concept. Point charge, we can consider this one, and the it is based on the experimental concept only. Theoretical concept is not at all found it. It is only based on the experimental ideas we are proving this Coulomb's law, and it is applicable only to the rest charges. If the charges are movable ones, definitely that charges will create some type of magnetic fields also, isn't it? Moving charges will create magnetic fields. So it is possible, it is it is applicable only to point charge system. The same manner, the force of attraction or repulsion will vary with respect to the medium, isn't it? That will vary as 1 by k, isn't it? F is inversely proportional to 1 by k. As the medium increases, as the medium changes from vacuum, definitely the value of force will vary. Clear? And it is obeying the inverse square law. So these all are the properties and other what we call functions of important concepts of Coulomb's law. Okay, thank you.